guys, it's Sophia. I wanted to make a tutorial video of how I upcycle tapestry blankets into hoodies in two different ways. And I will put two examples on the screen for you right now so you can see what I mean. And for the first one, we're gonna be switching out the sleeves and hood only, keeping the body of the hoodie the same. And for the second, we're going to be switching out the body of the hoodie, making that the tapestry, and then keeping the sleeves and the hood. And for the first one, I wanted to only use a sewing machine. For those who don't have a serger, any beginners, I've done it many times with only a sewing machine and I love how they turned out. And then the second version, I'm going to do with a serger just to make it applicable to as many people as I can. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so for materials we're going to need, so obviously we'll need a sewing machine. I have this stabilizer paper I use for my template, but you could use tracing paper. Bigger paper is probably best, but this is just what I have. A cutting mat is super helpful. Either scissors or one of these cutters. I like this one a bit more because I just feel like it's easier, sharper, and has more control. Then we're gonna need, I just have these binder clips. I find these are better than using pins for this type of project. And a pen to make your template. For the next one, we're gonna need a serger if that's what you wanna use. And then obviously we're gonna need your tapestry blanket and a hoodie. So I just wanted to add a couple additional supplies, just some tiny scissors, and the pins are super helpful for a particular part in the first hoodie. Okay, for this first hoodie, we start by making a template for the sleeve. We're gonna need that top edge of the sleeve against the end of the paper, and I'm going to go around and mark each corner, including the armpit, that top part by the shoulder, and the cuff. For the cuff, we're going to need to hold one side down and stretch it out as far as we can, and mark down where it is when it's fully stretched. I also like to pull the hoodie away so I can mark the curvature of that sleeve, just so I can get an accurate measurement. So after I connect the dots to get the exact outline of the sleeve, I'm going to go around and add about a 1/4 inch for seam allowance. I'm going to do that for each side except for that edge that goes along the paper because that is not going to be a seam. Now I'm just cutting that out and I'm going to bring it over to the tapestry. This is the lovely blanket we will be using. So we are going to start out by choosing what image we want to see on our sleeves. So I actually end up choosing this corner with the bee, a little bit of the eye and the leaf. So I'm going to take that area and I'm going to fold it over to make sure it will completely cover the template when it's folded over. Then I'm going to make sure that folded edge is aligned up with that edge that does not have any seam allowance, because that is going to be the outside of the sleeve. Then we're going to cut around that template through both the layers. You can use either the scissors or I'm using the blade here with the cutting mat. And that is how the full piece should look. And then you're just going to flip the template over and do the same exact thing over again for the other sleeve. Remember to be mindful of where you're cutting, making sure you're getting both layers, and just choosing the image that you want to see on the sleeve. So I'm going to take each of those sleeves and I'm going to fold over so right side is touching right side, and I'm going to clip all along that long raw edge. Then we're going to move over to the sewing machine and we are just going to do a straight stitch all along that same edge that we just clipped. And as far as length and width go, I just do the numbers that my machine recommends. So just going to sew a straight stitch all along the long edge for both of those sleeves. I'm then just trimming off the extra fabric just to give it a cleaner look. Then I'm going in again, but with a zigzag stitch. And I'm going to make sure this stitch goes over the edge of the sleeve because I want to make sure it's locking in all those threads. So I'm just going to say now this is going to be our pattern of sewing for this project. When I'm using a sewing machine, this is the method I use. First, a straight stitch. Second, trimming off the extra. Third, going in with a zigzag stitch. I just feel like this makes that seam as secure as you can make it. Now we're going to prepare to attach the sleeve. So I do that by cutting off the cuff and the upper shoulder part of the sleeve, and I'm leaving about a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each end. Then I'm going to move over to attaching the cuffs. So I'm going to flip the sleeve right side out, and I'm going to flip the cuff inside out. So then you're going to slide the cuff over that smaller edge of the sleeve, making sure the right side of the cuff is touching the right side of the sleeve. For the sake of looking clean, I like to match up the seam of the cuff with the seam of the sleeve. And now we get to a tricky part. I would recommend starting the clipping at that seam and pulling straight from there till it's straight. And then wherever your finger was when it's pulled straight, that's where you put the next clip. And then I would do the opposite direction to get the next clip. So pulling in that opposite direction, marking it with your finger, and that's where you put the next clip. And now I'm going to do it all over again for the other sleeve. So you're going to want to pull off this piece to your sewing machine because it's going to be very helpful to wrap the cuff around that smaller piece of the machine. And we are just going to go in with that formula I brought up earlier, starting with the straight stitch. An important part of this piece is, like we were pulling the cuff to put the clips on, we want to pull it that same way while we are stitching. So you want to pull it super taut as it's stitching. Part 2, just trimming off that excess. And once again switching over to the zigzag stitch, and once again we're going to want to hold the cuff taut as we stitch. And after that, this is what the cuffs should look like. Now we are going to attach them to the actual hoodie. So we have to start by turning the hoodie inside out, and we're going to take the sleeve that is right side out, and we are going to put it inside the hoodie through that sleeve hole. And I'm just going to match up the seams on the hoodie and the sleeve. And once again, that's going to be the first place I clip it, and I'm going to go around and clip the rest of it. This time you don't have to pull like you did with the cuffs, just lining them up and clipping them down. And I'm sure you guessed it, we are starting again with the straight stitch all along that edge. And I like to just put the next sleeve in right away and get that straight stitch done so I don't have to keep switching back and forth on my machine. So I got the second sleeve clipped in and straight stitched that. Then I can just trim those ends one after another. And then just going back in with the zigzag and doing those one after another. So this is what the hoodie looks like with only switching out the sleeves, and you could totally stop here if you were happy with how that looks. But I did not stop there. I switched out the hood. So how I started with that is, once again, we're going to make a template, and for the hoodie, it gets a little tricky because I like to use the fringe. So I line up the edge of the hoodie, so the front of the hoodie, with the edge of the paper. However, at the bottom of the hoodie, I like to give a little extra room because there's a small overlap of fabric, so I like to account for that with just a little more room. So just like the sleeve, I'm going to trace around it and then add about 1/4 seam allowance again, except for that edge that meets with the edge of the paper, of course. So after that's cut out, I'm going to take the edge that has no seam allowance and that gets lined up against the fringe because that's what I want to be showing on the front of the hoodie. Remembering that whatever you put the template over is going to be the image on the hoodie. Then I'm just going to flip the template upside down and do the same exact thing. Then I'm going to take both those pieces, put right sides together, and clip all the way around the raw edge, leaving the bottom edge open for now. And I think you guys know the drill now. We're going in with the straight stitch, followed by trimming the excess, and then going in with the zigzag. So this is what the unattached hood should look like. I'm going to get ready to attach it by cutting off the actual hood of the hoodie. And once again, leaving about 1/4 seam allowance right above that seam. Then I'm going to flip the hoodie inside out, and I'm going to connect the right side of the hood with the right side of the hoodie. And I just like to connect those seams to line up and make it look clean once it's finished. So once again, I'm starting my clipping there and then going all around. It helped me to tuck the hood inside of the hoodie like that. And yeah, just making sure you're getting right side to right side. I'm just getting a close up here of that overlapping fabric just to make sure you're keeping that in mind when you're clipping these on. And once again, straight stitch, followed by the trim, followed by zigzag stitch. So we're at another checkpoint where you could totally stop here, and to me it looks like a great finished hoodie still, but I will continue and show you how I add decorations to the front and back of the hoodie. So first I just cut out the pieces that I want to add to the hoodie. So I don't cut exactly around the design, but giving it probably about an inch of space around the image. And this is the part where the pins will come in handy. So I'm flipping the hoodie inside out, and then I'm going to take the image and put the right side against the inside of the hoodie and just pin that down. I did switch machines for bobbin reasons. However, I stitched this piece down with, I'm not sure what this stitch is called. It's like a type of zigzag stitch, but it almost looks like a straight stitch mixed with a zigzag. And I just feel like it secures all those tapestry threads as well as giving it a decorative piece when you look at it from the front. So then I'm just going to repeat that for my pieces that I want to see on the back. And once again, we're doing the right side of the tapestry to the wrong side of the hoodie. Okay, now the fun part. We are going to cut that layer of the hoodie to reveal the image underneath. And this point, you do have to be careful. You're only cutting that hoodie layer. Make sure you do not cut through the tapestry. But this part is a lot of fun. And here are the results for the first hoodie. Okay, let's get started on the second way you can upcycle a blanket into a hoodie. So this is the tapestry I'm using and the hoodie. And so for this one, we're going to take out the middle piece of the hoodie. So we're going to want to make a template for that. So I'm just going around and marking all the little spots that I'll need to connect. Armpit, shoulder, the collar around the hood, and then the cuffs as well. And the cuff at the bottom is going to be very similar to the cuffs in the last hoodie, where you're going to want to stretch it as far as you can and mark off that point. So we're going to make our template with the cuff totally stretched out. And once again, I am adding a 1/4 seam allowance to the entire piece this time around. And after I cut this out, I'm just deciding what part of the tapestry I actually want to be on the front and back of the hoodie. So I did want this little cardinal on the front, but I also wanted to make sure I had enough space so I could make the back. So the front's going to be the cardinal and the back will be that tree and the houses in the back. For this one, I actually taped down the template onto the tapestry. It just made it easier for me while I cut around the template. However, I've seen people just put weights on the template too, so whichever way works for you. And then I actually just used the piece that I had cut out to make the back. I just wanted to make them very exact, so I just placed that and taped it over the area that I want to be the back and trimmed around. Okay, and now we can see the gist of what the hoodie will look like. So I'm going to put them right side, and I'm going to clip the shoulder area because I'm going to serge those first, and then I'm just putting the template over it to mark where the armpit starts, so I know to stop sewing at that point to leave holes for the sleeves. So like I said, I'm using a serger for this hoodie. However, you can totally use a sewing machine. So there I serged the shoulders and the two sides, and now I'm just tying the knots to make sure those seams stay nice and closed. Going back over to the hoodie, I'm going to seam rip this both sides of that pocket and the upper portion so I am able to reattach it to the tapestry. From there, I'm going to cut that bottom cuff off, leaving myself about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to cut off both sleeves, and this time I'm cutting it outside of the sleeve, still giving that 1/4 seam allowance. And lastly, we'll cut off the hood, and I'm also cutting that outside of the seam, still leaving that 1/4 seam allowance. So for this hoodie, I decided I would keep the hoodie right side out and the hood right side out and just attach them that way. Still working in the same fashion, clipping it all around the edges, right side to right side. And just serging that all around. Obviously, if you were on the sewing machine, I would do the straight stitch, trim, and then zigzag. But with the serger, it's a lot easier, just one way all the way through. So the hood is now attached. I'm going to flip the hoodie inside out, and we are going to put the sleeves in. They are going to stay right side out, and we're going to insert them in the sleeve holes and clip them all around just like we did for the last hoodie. We're going to serge that sleeve and then do it all over again for the other side. Okay, for this bottom cuff, it's going to be similar to how we did the wrist cuffs for the last hoodie. I'm just lining up the pocket to make sure it's right in the middle, and I'm going to start my first clip there. After I clip it there, I'm going to pull right from that area straight across to clip the other side, and I'm going to continue pulling it to make sure both the hoodie and the tapestry are flat and clipping them together. Going back to the serger, I'm going to pull between the two clips to make sure the tapestry and hoodie are flat and continue serging while I hold them taut. I like to sew in increments for this type of thing, doing the distance between two clips for each stretch. And now I'm moving over to my sewing machine to sew back on the pocket. And this I'm just doing a straight stitch right along those seams that I seam ripped earlier. So it's fairly easy. You just follow the lines for both of those sides and the top horizontal piece as well. Okay, you guys, that completes my tutorial of how you can make two different types of hoodies using tapestry blankets, really any kind of blanket you own or fabric. So I hope that was clear and helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please leave them below, and I'll do my best to clear up anything you're curious about. But I had a great time making this video, and I'll see you guys next time.